Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Total Saints podcast. I'm Martin Starke, and each week I'm joined by our panel of Saints experts to reflect on the last 7 days following Southampton Football Club. Once again, we're streaming this episode of TSP live tonight. It's on our Twitter and our Facebook pages, and you can also find it over on our YouTube channel. So if you're watching live, you can get involved in the conversation in real time using the comments section. Feel free to chuck in your questions, and we'll answer as many as we can tonight. And if you've seen Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's exit interview today, I promise that this won't be the strangest thing that you've watched on the internet. Coming up this week on the pod, reaction to the defeat at Norwich on Saturday, and we look ahead to the trip to Liverpool at the weekend. So first, let me introduce you to our guests this week, the faces you can see on the screen. Owner of SaintsWeb, Steve Grant, who, if you're not familiar with Steve's travel movements, is in Dubai at the moment on work. Have you been able to catch some live sport this week, Steve?
Yeah, I found out that China are playing their home World Cup qualifiers in Sharjah, just down the road from here. So I went along to their game with Australia on, when was that, Tuesday. So that was all right. I mean, it was a terrible standard of football, and Australia are going to get absolutely humped if they qualify, which looks like they probably should still scrape through, but they're nowhere near the side they were even 3 years ago in Russia. They're going to get battered by everybody, unfortunately for them. But they got a draw out of that game, which is probably just about enough. But yeah, not a particularly high standard of football at the moment.
But it was a game nonetheless.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Also with us is writer of the blog League One -10. That's Glen de la Cour. I hope the game hasn't ruined your weekend too much, Glen. Are you sharpening the pencil for the next blog?
Yeah. I've sharpened it, written the blog, crossed it out, started again. There's quite a lot to get through with regards to Saturday's game without being too negative. It was on my birthday as well, so that was a great present at the end of the day. Awesome stuff. So the blog will probably be a little bit more fiery than it has been of late when it eventually comes out.
Good. I look forward to that. Also with us, the other face you can see or voice you can hear is the Athletics dedicated Saints reporter. That's Dan Sheldon. How was Norwich, Dan? I know you were there yesterday.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Long day. Forgot to book a hotel, so ended up going back there and in one day. But it was fine. It was good. Decent atmosphere. Shame about the result, but yeah, all in all, it was not a too bad day. Saw some people I knew, so yeah, it was good.
And is the catering at Norwich as good as you'd expect it to be, or is that just a rumour?
Well, I imagine Delia's probably cooking other stuff for the directors as opposed to what we're getting in the press lounge. But it was very good. I'm not going to complain.
Good. Well, the biggest hello and thank you, as always, is reserved to our patrons. So wherever you're listening or wherever you're watching, welcome to episode 176 of the Total Saints podcast. Now, it was very much a tale of two halves at Carrow Road. We shall discuss them both individually, of course, but having had a bit of time to reflect on the game, what did you make of it all, Steve?
It's just one of those game of two halves, wasn't it, from us? And it's so frustrating that second half was almost certainly the absolute worst half of football that we've put together all season. Even that Wolves game that was fairly dreary, and the second half at Everton that was just staggeringly incompetent at times. It was just odd that we just got completely rattled and then shot ourselves in the foot with a combination of terrible substitutions and terrible defending from a bog standard set piece. First half we were excellent, I thought, and I mean, getting that goal early on, the first 3 minutes, when you're thinking, well, the crowd's going to be really up for this. We've got to quieten them down quickly, and we did exactly that. And you kind of thought, right, okay, no, we've got this. And then ref doesn't give us a free kick, which I think more often than not that gets given. And the space that Walker Peters has left is where the cross comes from, and that was a good header by Pookie, but I think McCarthy is probably going to be a little bit disappointed not keeping it out sort of that close to the near post.
We'll get on to Alex McCarthy later, I'm sure, in detail. Does it feel like we've taken a step backwards, though, Glenn? Or do you think we may be getting a bit carried away after a couple of good results?
No, because of the standard of teams that we've been playing. We've been playing recently are the teams we expect to pick up points against. If you get beat by one of the big boys, then it's expected, and you come away from the game, even if you've lost, feeling that, oh well, we've lost a game that we were expected to lose. This game is one that we should have got 3 points from, no question. So, in respect of how many points we should have after this number of games, it is a step backwards. We've done this before at Norwich. We've gone up there and when they've been awful, and we've played terribly and got beat 1-0 or something like that. So it wasn't a total surprise, but the way it came about, as Steve alluded to, was very, very disappointing. And we did literally load the gun and then shoot ourselves. It was poor, and getting not even getting a draw out of it is pretty ropey, to be honest.
It did feel like this result has been coming for a while, though, Dan. The warning signs have certainly been there. We've spoken about it. You've written about it. And it was all about not taking those chances again.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think they kind of, in recent weeks, they didn't score the goals that, we'd like them to. But I think it kind of brushed off the thought that performance was coming, because they seemed to have got over that. They were keeping clean sheets and defending well, and McCarthy was making good saves, whereas on Saturday, I kind of agree with everything that Steve and Glen has said, really. I said to my Norwich colleague, Michael Bailey, it's that horrible cliche, but you kind of feel like if Southampton can get the first goal, then that just takes all the wind out of Norwich's sails. And because they got it so early on, you just thought, right, here we go then. This should be a fairly routine win. But yeah, I thought it was right in front of us where we were sat in the press box. I thought it was a foul on Walker-Peters. And yeah, I think McCarthy will kind of look at himself and think he should have done better, but yeah, he should have done. He's been beaten at his near post twice yesterday, but then also, as Ralph said after the game, for the first goal, he still ran 60 yards and managed to get a cross in. And I know Walker-Peters was out of position, but could they have defended better? Was kind of Ralph's point, and I think they probably could have. I mean, the second one was just shocking. But I don't think it's been coming. They've beaten the teams that you'd expect them to beat. So I think everyone kind of expected them to go to Norwich and beat Norwich. I certainly did. But they didn't. So, for me, it hasn't been coming, but it's a disappointing one either way.
Yeah. Let's start with the only change to the side that beat Aston Villa, which was Diallo coming in for the injured Stuart Armstrong, which, given the other right-sided options, that was a bit of a strange one. Did that work for you, Steve? Could you see the logic behind that?
Not hugely. I mean, Diallo, as we discussed before, had been impressive in those 3 games he played whilst Ward-Prowse was suspended. But trying to accommodate all 3 of them into the central midfield, which effectively necessitated a change of formation to effectively go to a 4-3-3, just seemed a little bit like we were overthinking it. I mean, lads, to coin the old Sir Alex Ferguson team talk, lads, it's Norwich. You should be able to go out there and play our normal game with our normal system and beat the team that up until 2 weeks ago hadn't won a single game all season. And it kind of felt as if Diallo wasn't quite sure where he needed to be most of the time. While when he got on the ball, he was neat and tidy and did a lot of very good things. It felt as if him and a couple of other players seemed to be kind of getting in each other's way at times. I thought Romeo was excellent, and it was weird that he was the one that got taken off. Because ultimately it's that leadership in a situation where you've got sort of a rocking crowd sort of trying to sort of get behind their team, where you need that little bit of leadership just to kind of steady the ship a little bit, and taking him off basically removed all of that. But yeah, I mean, you look at who we had left on the bench. Teller again is left unused. I mean, Walcott came on, and other than that missed header, which, I mean, it was a reasonably tough chance for someone that isn't great in the air. But you'd probably fancy Shay Adams to score that, and taking off our informed scorer again just seemed strange. So yeah, a lot of weirdness going on with the selection and the substitutions. And and it was weird, particularly strange, because given last month, it kind of seemed as if Ralph had got over his sort of almost like this virus of not knowing when to make subs or which ones were going to positively impact the team, and he's made two that have quite clearly made us significantly worse for the remainder of that game. So yeah, I mean, it's disappointing, but even so, the team that we picked, based on first half performance at least, should have been good. Should still have been good enough to have been 2 or 3 goals to the good at half time.
And we got off to the best possible start, Glenn. That was a great strike from Che Adams. I think that's 5 goals now, is it, in 6 games, if you include Scotland? What did you make of the goal and the start and the relationship between the two of them up front?
Well, they started very well. I mean, it was a great goal. Armstrong poked it forward, and Adams, that's what he's good at. He's good at holding off defenders and finding the yard, and it was a good finish. That was kind of what I expected, because Norwich are poor at the back, but then they kind of proved that. They were very committed. The amount of blocks they pulled off in the rest of the first half. If you watch the highlights, there's sort of like 3 or 4 where they've got players throwing themselves in the way. So Norwich actually didn't defend that badly, but individually, I mean, players like Grant Hanley, who scored the winning goal. He's up there in the conversation as worst player in the Premier League at the moment. And he showed that one where Adams went through after Hanley had trodden on the ball, and Cour made a good save. That really should have been the second goal, and that would have settled things down. But no, Adams started the game well. Adam Armstrong was busy in the first half, but the substitutions that they ended up with Adams and Armstrong sort of splitting right and left, with Brozier up the middle, and so basically, you've taken 2 informed players out of position, put Brozier up front, and he barely touched the ball. It was hopeless, to be honest. So we brought on the big striker and taken off Elianusi, who's like the only midfielder who can cross the ball. And it was bizarre. The tactics with the narrow 3 in midfield, they were okay in the first half, whilst the fullbacks were getting forward, which they did to really good effect in the first half. But I mean, for me, Livramento was knackered second half. And he seems to get left on for 90 minutes, regardless of how knackered he is. He's obviously had a problem over the international break, because he got pulled out of the England side, England squad rather. So I do wonder if there's something he maybe needs a couple of weeks off. Maybe stick Perot in and Walker Peters over the other side. But yeah, I agree with Steve. There was some strangeness, some strange ideas going on with that team, and it didn't really work in the end.
We've spoken about Adams and Armstrong as a partnership looking good, and how Brozier might fit in. How did it work out for you, Dan? The two of them up front, they seem to have a good awareness of each other, and there was some chances there.
Yeah, the first half was impressive from Southampton. They created, I think, they had 12 shots at Norwich's goal, so they were clearly doing something right. I think what actually stifled them, and where Ralph got it wrong, which is kind of, as Glenn has already kind of spoken about, or it may have been Steve actually, kind of the mistakes he's made in the past of the wrong subs, not kind of reacting to what's happening in the game, which he had been doing really well, I thought, up until Carrow Road. Dean Smith he made a sub at half time, changed the system. That made Southampton play a lot narrower, which meant Walker Peters and Livramento are no longer outlets on the wings. Now in the first half, time and time again, they would find either Kyle or Tino on the right or the left, and they'd have so much space to kind of run into, put a cross in. But that stopped in the second half. And yeah, just the changes Ralph made were just utterly puzzling. They didn't help. They made the team worse. Adams, I don't know why you take him off at the hour mark. He was a threat. He'd clearly got the better of Hanley on more than one occasion. You just think, why take him off for Walcott, who just hasn't quite done it this season. But that was Ralph's choice. Ralph said after the game that the sub didn't have the effect that he wanted them to, and he said he brought Brozier on because at the time, Norwich were obviously on top, and he thought that there was a better chance for Southampton on the counter attack, but that just kind of failed to materialise as well. So it was just an awful kind of second half at the office for Ralph and for Southampton.
Raoul, who's watching us live, says, good evening, chaps. He says, I hate to say it, but we've looked less dynamic over 90 minutes since James Ward-Prowse has been back. Is that fair comment, Steve? Is that something that you'd agree on there?
Yeah, it's not unreasonable, I don't think. I think Prowse had his best game of the season against Villa. So absolutely no problem with that game. But certainly certainly yesterday, he was. I don't know whether it was necessary that we were less dynamic because he was there, or we were less dynamic because we were quite congested in the centre of the park. So obviously, first, as Dan said, first half, the fullbacks were pushing on and getting a lot of joy. And kind of side point, but Brandon Williams, Jesus, he's rubbish. Like seriously bad. That's a good one that we've avoided there.
Dodged, yeah.
But yeah, I didn't think he played particularly badly. But the problem is that he's got the way his body shape sets up for when he's looking across the ball is so obvious and so easy to telegraph that defenders can kind of set themselves for a certain body shape, and they can then get themselves ready for the cross. Whereas with other players, when we get into a sort of crossing position, generally it's because we've got behind them, and as a result, we've obviously used a little bit of pace to do that. Whereas when Prowse's on the ball and crossing from deep, I don't know, it just kind of feels we've not made the defence kind of turn and face their own goal to then try and deal with the balls into the box. So yeah, I don't know whether it's necessarily we've been less dynamic. I just think that it's, I don't know, possibly slightly more predictable maybe.
He had the injury as well, Dan, pulling out of the England squad. Do we know much more about that? Was it just illness? There was talk it might have been COVID because Redmond had tested positive too. He's clearly not been 100%, has he?
No, Ralph said he was asked about that at his press conference ahead of the game and said it was an illness and didn't elaborate on that. So, yeah, I think we kind of just move on, and he's back. He was back training. He was back playing at the weekend. So we assume he's fine.
It was a sloppy goal to concede the first one, but we still, I felt, looked good after that goal. Diallo could have had the penalty. Do you want to tackle the referee, Glenn? Another poor game.
Like
just bearing in mind we're streaming live and the usual.
I always get asked the referee question. Martin Atkinson was last seen not giving us a penalty for Kyle Walker's 100-mile-an-hour body check up at Manchester City. Yeah, I mean, at the time when Walker Peters went over when Norwich scored the first goal, I didn't think it was a foul. But when you watch it back, is it Rashika's got hold of his arm for a bit, and then he seems to trip him over. So I can understand Ralph being a bit annoyed about that. But I don't see with VAR how that challenge from Cantwell on Diallo as that cross came over, I don't see how that's not a penalty. He's quite clearly bumped him in the back. Yes, it's soft, but I'm surprised that more wasn't made of that, to be honest. But there you go. But other than that, I didn't have any, those two incidents. I didn't really have anything too much to complain about Martin Atkinson about. But
he just didn't really give us anything, did he? There was no,
not really.
Like all the 50-50s generally went their way. I don't think he gave us anything that I kind of looked at and thought, that's a little bit of a soft one until about 15-20 minutes from the end.
Yeah, but yeah, Martin Atkinson is not one of my favourite referees, but I don't think he was too bad yesterday. But yeah, we could certainly question the opening goal. But as you know, the game's gone on for a good 30-40 seconds, and they've ended up scoring. It's very good bit of movement by Pukki because he's being marked by Bednarek, and he sort of leaves Bednarek and gets across the front of Salisu, and it's a good header. But yeah, McCarthy's like a tree falling down, isn't he? I mean, you've got to save that near post, and we haven't even got to the second goal yet, which was equally as bad.
Well, Tom, who's watching our live stream, says he says, I don't know if it's just me, but I believe that Bednarek is highly overrated. We've not really been bigging him up too much. He's all right. We've been talking about Salazut. Steve, do you want to tackle the question about that goal and the responsibility for that? We're blaming the ref. We're blaming the keeper, the defenders.
No, I mean, as Glenn said, it's a good bit of movement by Pookie, which that's basically the only thing he's got really, is that he comes alive in sort of sharp little bursts, and you've got to be alert to it, and we weren't. Bednarek, I think, he's at a level, but when he first kind of came into the team, everyone you thought, oh, great, young, promising centre half who's got a lot of potential. But the problem is that the last kind of 9 months or so, basically pretty much most of this calendar year, he's kind of hit a ceiling of where his performance level can get to, and he's kind of sort of bobbing up and down a little bit now. Obviously didn't start the season in the side because Jack Stevens had obviously impressed Ralph during pre-season. I mean, Salisu now is basically pretty much carved in blood in that first team. So it's then a case of who plays alongside him. And Bednarek's he's one of those that for most games you won't notice anything. He'll kind of be all right. He won't do anything sort of spectacular. He'll win his headers. He'll put his challenges in. He'll make the passes to the right people. We won't do anything silly. And then just occasionally he'll just let his marker run. I mean, I don't think that first goal is necessarily his fault, because not only has Pookie left Bednarek, but he's also got ahead of Salisu by a good couple of yards. So yeah, I mean, there's slight culpability on both of them, but he's got a good few yards ahead of the front post. So for him to still get a header in on target and to score, I mean, it's a good header. He's got a lot of power on it, but I mean, as Glenn said, McCarthy's got to be doing a lot better there, I think.
Yeah. Second half, Norwich changed things around. They upped the tempo. They were much more aggressive. We saw that to a certain extent with Villa in Dean Smith's last game. So should we have seen that coming more, Dan? Do you think they just weren't prepared for that start in the second half?
Well, I don't think it was that they weren't prepared, because they dominated the rest of the first half from the moment Norwich scored. It was just they didn't react to what Norwich had done. And you could look at it and think, well, if, they all saw the player coming on at half time. It shouldn't take, kind of professional football coaches too long to realise what's happened and react to that. So should they have expected? I mean, they would have expected a reaction, because you don't think Norwich could have been much worse. And I'm sure Dean Smith kind of had something to say about it at half time. But going into the second half, at no point did I think Southampton were going to kind of cede control in that game, because they were just so dominant. It was almost as if Norwich's midfield just didn't exist. Every time Southampton just played through them, they weren't there. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure the team talk at halftime isn't going to be right. They're going to do this, this, and this. So we do this, this, and this. I'm sure it's probably right. Let's carry on doing what we're doing, because we're going to create so many chances. One will go in. It didn't, and yeah, the minute Norwich got on top, and they were on top for the second half, it does lift the crowd, because they've got a new manager there. Whatever we've kind of said about Norwich, they're not dead and buried. They're not down, and it turned out to be a great weekend for them. But the point I'm trying to make is Southampton just didn't react. That was why they didn't win that game, is because whether it was outsmarted or whatever by Dean Smith made the change that changed the game, and Southampton conceded 2 very sloppy goals. And as Ralph often says, it's Premier League football, and he got taught a lesson yesterday.
Yeah, big time. He just seemed to overcomplicate things, Glenn. Strange choices, as you said, that weakened the sides. And he's obviously not done that on purpose, but you struggle to go out, the subs that he's made, breaking up that partnership up front. What on earth are you thinking there? And
you can never
it, and it's easy with hindsight, of course.
Yeah, you can never categorically say that's a stupid thing to do at the time. But that's why football managers are paid the big bucks to make decisions. And if it goes wrong, then you're going to get pulled up on it, especially if it's the sort of thing where, to the outside world, it doesn't quite make sense. I wonder if there was a bit of complacency in the second half, because the first half, apart from the scoreline, was relatively easy. And when Norwich come out firing in the second half, they obviously pushed up a lot more. And the lad who came on, Sargent, is more of a forward player than Cantwell, and he's more of a physical presence. Whether we just didn't deal with it, and I'm not sure how it stopped our fullbacks getting forward, but it certainly did. For example, Livramento wasn't pushed right up on Brandon Williams like he was in the first half. So Norwich obviously changed something, and as Dan said, we just didn't seem to react to it at all. And it was one of those games where from about sort of 55, before he made the first substitution, I was already struggling to see us getting another goal. It just seemed like the life had gone out of us, sort of thing. I didn't actually think Norwich would score again, but games in the Premier League are basically won and lost in the 2 penalty areas. And if you throw in 2 goals, you're going to find it really hard to win a game. Norwich didn't have to work hard for their goals.
Yeah,
really.
That's true. We caused the problems ourselves, didn't we?
Yeah,
I think. Definitely. Yeah. Let's talk about the goalkeeping then. Dan, last week we were talking about Alex McCarthy, or last time out, and you knew I was going to come to you with this, potentially playing for England. Can we forgive him the poor game? Questionable for both goals yesterday, and I know that he won't be happy with that. But have we seen too many of these blips?
As Glen takes a swig of his drink.
Got a bit of popcorn out.
He's baying for blood now, isn't he? I've been an advocate of McCarthy's this season. I think he's had undue criticism a fair bit, and he's made some big saves, and they've kept a lot of clean sheets. Yesterday wasn't good enough. You've got to say how it was. It wasn't good enough, and let's be honest, he doesn't need me to say that or anyone else to say it. You'd like to think he will know that wasn't good enough, and the second one in particular was just, it's cost Southampton the game, isn't it? You can't concede that kind of goal. You just can't do it, and he has, and you call a mistake a mistake. It was a mistake. Do I think he should now all of a sudden be dropped for Fraser Forster? Absolutely not. I don't think so. It was a poor game. I'd like to think he will know it was a poor game, and I was going to say look forward to the next one, but they're playing Liverpool, so I don't know where you go from here. But
be a bit harsh to say, here you go, Fraser, you go and play that one.
No, in all seriousness, though, look, it was a poor game from Alex. As I say, he doesn't need us to say that. He will know that. And Ralph was, I think his words were very, 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 3 verys disappointed about the manner of that goal. So let's be honest. I think everyone at the team knows that what happened, and it can't happen again. It's cost Southampton 3 points, and it's just not great, is it?
What we don't want, though,
just to share it around, Martin. Lianco was supposed to be marking Hanley. He had him, lost him, and he got a header in from 6 yards. So as always, it's not, it's very rarely solely one person's fault. Lianco ended up stood at the back post marking absolutely no one, and so it's as I keep saying, it's a team game, and Lianco has to do better there as well.
The only thing I would, I guess, chuck into the mix, Steve, is that we know pretty much that Forster's going to be going in the summer. So is that something that we look at when we get to January, do you think?
It depends on who's available. There's certainly been reports. I don't know if Dan can corroborate this, but there's certainly been reports that we're interested in picking Sam Johnston up from West Brom, who's obviously in the England setup, and I think is out of contract in the summer as well. So that would kind of work out quite nicely. I think he's a good age and is the right sort of profile in terms of his physique and being decent with the ball at his feet as well. So whether there's a deal to be done to make sure that we're not in a basically just in a sort of wage competition with other clubs in the summer, maybe there's something that we could look at in January. But it's one of those of how much money are you willing to put on the table just to avoid paying more money in wages. And the player himself will probably quite rightly say, well, hang on, why don't I just sit it out and I'll get more of that money for myself? But unless there's someone that we've been tracking for a while that suddenly we think we might be able to get in January, I don't see the point. We'll wait till the summer.
It's always a hot topic of conversation. Saint194 says, let's not forget that Fraser Forster went through a period of time where he couldn't catch a cold either. And that's how McCarthy got back in the side, if I remember. And Simo says, go on, Dan.
I was going to say, just to jump in on the comment Steve made about Sam Johnstone, as we are talking about goalkeepers. I think I reported a little while ago that Southampton were certainly looking at him and looking at the situation. And at the time, I thought it made a lot of sense. Yeah, that you could see that happening. But when you think about it, and I thought about it quite a bit, they've given McCarthy a new 3-year contract. If you then go and sign Sam Johnstone, I don't know, you then not in exactly the same position you were when you had Fraser and Alex, where you're basically paying 2 number ones and one has to sit on. They would just be repeating that same mistake, in my opinion. I think the fact that Alex has signed that new contract, I think they put their eggs in his basket, at least for the next kind of two or 3 years. And I just think if you went and got Sam Johnstone, are you not just in the same situation you are now, where you're paying 2 goalkeepers an awful lot of money and one is just sitting on the bench?
I think it depends on the scale of McCarthy's contract. I mean, everyone knows that Forster's one of our highest paid players. So that situation has been quite often financially driven over the last few years, in terms of whether we play him or whether we look to shift him out on loan. But it's one of those where I think they've got to kind of take everything into consideration, but at the same time, you've got to find your best option. If there's a better goalkeeper out there than Alex McCarthy, and as a Premier League club, I think we should certainly be looking to see if there is one. Then it should be our aim. Because let's be honest, neither him or Forster have managed to nail down the position where both of them have gone through spells of being terrible.
Yeah.
So clearly, neither of them are. I'm not going to say perfect, because you're never going to get perfect at our level, but then neither of them are ideal for us. In that they're definitely going to give you a 7 out of 10 performance every week.
And what we don't want to go back to is the days of switching between the two of them, because I think we all agreed unanimously that whilst we couldn't decide who should be in goal, we always thought that was a particularly bad idea. Speaking of the big earners, Theo Walcott had half a chance with that free header. Difficult to build a case for him getting on the pitch at the moment, Glenn. Certainly looking at... I think you mentioned that we'd be better off playing with 10 men, didn't you, yesterday?
Yeah, I might have mentioned that.
Still stand by that.
Well, I suppose, really, if he was in any sort of decent form, you would have expected him to start the game, seeing that Gineppo and Armstrong and Redmond were all unavailable. He's kind of the only senior wide man left, but instead of that, Ralph's decided to go with Diallo kind of out of position. So he wasn't considered to start, even though he was, in terms of profile, the obvious person to do so. Bringing him on as a sub, taking off our most informed player, Che Adams, and replacing him with Theo, who is our most out of form player, was mind blowing. For me, I just couldn't get it. Theo looks to be playing with absolutely zero confidence, which is not what you expect from a player of his experience. He should be able to sort of rise above that and at least contribute something. But there's just nothing there at the moment. He's so far away from being a useful sort of like member of the side at the moment. I don't want to go on about the guy too much, but. And it's not his fault we lost the game.
Yeah.
He's basically got Redmond's self-esteem from about 2 years ago, hasn't he?
Yeah. I mean, we get, we've Elianussi's back from the dead, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I was surprised he got taken off yesterday as well, because he wasn't bad, you know. I was surprised he got substituted. Stuart Armstrong seems to have had trouble with injuries, and you know, Nathan Redmond has kind of risen in my estimation a little bit this season as well. But you know, Walcott's gone backwards this year, and you do wonder if we're going to see any sort of return on the investment we've made with the 2-year contract for him.
Yeah, tough one. So Liverpool next. What have you made to their start of the season, Steve?
Oh, they've been rubbish.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Scraped a result of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that last season where they were defending champions and had basically everybody injured at various stages of the season, I think you probably didn't get a realistic appraisal of how good that set of players is, and now we're starting to kind of see it again this season. And Arsenal have been on a good run recently, but you kind of look at who they've played and who they've beaten, and you think, well, let's take it in context. They've not played anybody half decent, and now they've come up against one of the best and just had their asses handed to them. I mean, that second half was just an absolute, just all over them, absolute carnage, and 4-0 was probably flattering in the end. So, I mean, Ralph's going to have to set us up pretty damn well for us to have any hope of getting anything from there. Yeah. Although, saying that, Liverpool do have a bit of a record of being a little bit complacent against sort of seemingly weaker opposition, having blown a 2-goal lead at home to Brighton not too long ago, and Brighton are falling back down the table as you kind of expected them to do. And yet they still managed to get a draw at Anfield. So yeah, it's not out of the realms of possibility, but yeah, not going into that with any degree of confidence, to be honest.
Is it a good opportunity to bounce back though, Dan? Because I'm thinking about the game away at Manchester City where we set up well, we put in a good performance. I'm trying to sort of grasp at some straws here. Is this a good game in a way in that it's a free hit because we're not expecting to win there?
I don't think any game really is kind of a free hit. I think you have ones where you don't expect to win, but I know the way Ralph operates. He doesn't look at this game as it doesn't really matter what happens at Anfield because we weren't expected to win there. He sees these as, you know, his biggest tests, and he seems to get himself up for them more than perhaps other games. I think if you look at that Man City performance away from home, you know, they can kind of replicate that, then they're going to have a good chance of at least keeping Liverpool quiet. I mean, I think that's going to be a very difficult task based on the evidence we saw yesterday. And based on what we saw from Southampton. But Ralph has this funny thing about, you know, geeing his players up for these kind of games, and why not? I mean, they haven't got anything to lose in that regard. So yeah, they could absolutely go there, put in a good performance, and all it takes is Liverpool to, you know, drop their levels by 5 or 10%, and then that for them will make all the difference. The only concern I have is that it doesn't take a lot for Liverpool to score. They don't need that many chances, and they don't need to have particularly good chances, and they tend to score. Whereas against Man City, I don't remember rightly. I think obviously at the end where they had the goal chalked off, but they didn't create loads of chances, which I thought, oh, that should have gone. I can't, unless you know, my memory's hazy, but I can't remember them making loads and loads of chances. And Liverpool are a side that do that. So it's going to be a long afternoon, but I wouldn't ultimately be surprised if Southampton did raise their levels and came away with a point, although I don't think they will leave Anfield with a point.
How do we set up for this one, Glenn? I presume Diallo on the right is not really going to be an option. And you're not going to start with Walcott, are you? So, you know, how do you go about this one?
I don't really know, to be honest. I mean, we've gone there with a standard 4-2-2-2 before that. You know, Ralph's favourite formation, and I anticipate us doing that. He will try and cause them a problem going the other way. We won't sit in. I wouldn't have thought. I guess there is a possibility he may start Lianco and go with 3 at the back, but I don't think he fully trusts him yet. You know, I think he's used him to sort of come in and try and sort a situation out, rightly or wrongly, halfway through a game. But he hasn't started with him yet, apart from the cup game. He may do that. I'd be surprised, to be honest. I mean, I assume we'll have the likes of Redmond and Stuart Armstrong available, which will give more options. But I wouldn't like to second guess it. But like Dan, though, I think we are capable of certainly not making it easy for them. And I certainly don't expect us to get battered. But it's one of those games where
last words.
Yeah. I mean,
you're going to warm up for the Ashes.
With I always like it when Jurgen Klopp is interviewed after a bad result, because he always makes a bit of a dick of himself. So I hope we can see some of that. But you know, any chances we create, we have to take them. We can't be this one goal from 10 chances or 10 situations where we can have a shot at goal. We have to be more clinical, and we can't give goals away. You know, because Liverpool are going to score good goals. You know, against most teams, they score good goals. They don't need the opposition defenders to give them gifts, or goalkeepers to throw it in their own net. You know, you just have to keep things incredibly tight, and with a fair shake off the referee and a decent following win, maybe you can get something.
Fingers crossed. What we all want to see is Ralph and Jurgen in the same way that Mikel and Jurgen went at it yesterday. I mean, that would be, as it was in the toilet at Carrow Road. This is a really glamorous picture I'm painting now. I was going to the toilet, and where they are, they're with, like, in the concourse, so all the fans are in there. And there was a bloke who was going for a wee, and I was waiting. He said, not to me, to his mate, "Don't you think Ralph looks like the sort of guy that would punch you in a nightclub?"
Was it the suit?
I don't know what it was.
I think it was the three-piece suit, because obviously when everyone's been away on international duty, it looked like he'd been to Moss Bros and picked up a random three-piece suit.
Well, I imagine he's been to Savile Row. I think Moss Bros is probably, I doubt he'd go there.
I remember seeing something on Twitter a while ago where it ranked the 20 managers from the Premier League in terms of who would win in a fight. And Ralph got ranked pretty highly by everybody. He just looks hard, I guess.
There's one for next week, Dan. Maybe you can do that article. Let's do the score.
Commissioned, but
Let's do the score predictions then. Shock horror, nobody got the scores right last week. If you're watching the live stream, feel free to stick your predictions into the comments, and we'll see if you can get closer than we did. Steve, do you want to kick us off with this?
I just don't see anything other than a comfortable defeat for this one, but just get out of there and not be completely embarrassed. Take a 3-0.
All right, Glenn.
I think we'll do okay, and I think we'll score as well. So I'll go a 2-1 to Liverpool.
2-1 to Liverpool. And Dan?
I was going to say 2-1 to Liverpool, but I'll go 3-1 Liverpool, so as not to copy Glenn.
All right. Mark says 0-0. So, I think we'd all settle for that in advance.
Well, it'll be that at the start.
Alistair says a 3-1 defeat, and Glenn, who I think is watching our Facebook stream, has gone for 2-2. So who knows? Whatever happens, I'm sure there's going to be plenty to discuss next week. Before we finish, a couple of other bits to tell you about. This week I spent half an hour with the Saints managing director, Toby Steele. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about ticketing, safe standing, the women's team, improvements to the stadium, January transfer window, a little bit on that too. We're going to release that as a bonus episode of the pod. So look out for that dropping on Wednesday. And we're constantly putting work into our TSP Icons store. This is the online shop, and we're adding new designs and updating some of your favorite items all the time. TeePublic, who hosts our store, run a huge sale all the time across some of the products on there. So if you haven't already, do go and check it out. You can find the link in the show notes on the podcast or in the description on our YouTube channel. That's about it, I think, for episode 176. So my thanks, as always, to Steve, to Glenn, and to Dan. Thank you, chaps. Have a good week. Thanks also to our Matt Letizia tier patrons. That's Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, and Phil Cook. Nick Reed is in our Francis Benali tier. And Anthony Thompson joined our £10 tier this week. So welcome, Anthony, and thank you for your support. To find out more about becoming a TSP patron and the benefits that come with that, do check out the website, and you can find all the recent episodes of the Total Saints podcast on our YouTube channel. So do check that out. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe. You can follow us wherever you're listening to the podcast. And on the socials, we are at Total Saints Pod. You'll find us on Twitter and Facebook. And if you'd like to get in touch with the team, maybe some questions for next week, you can always drop us an email as well via the website. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and have a good week.